Hi, I'm Melissa Cobb. Come fly with AOPA. This week we share how AOPA is helping veterans with their medicals, the story of Ike's Bird, that's the smallest Air Force One, and we kick off our series on beginner backcountry flying basics.
AOPA keeps flying safe, accessible, and fun by protecting your freedom to fly. We are the most trusted one-stop resource for all things related to general aviation. Become an AOPA pilot today.
Backcountry flying gives us the opportunity to push our pilot skills and take our airplanes off the beaten path. This week, I share some backcountry flying basics that I've learned and take you into a strip on my dad's farm. So I'm here at my dad's farm in West Virginia on a grass strip, has a dog leg in the middle, and it's down in a bowl, so it's an interesting approach. It's a lot of fun. Backcountry flying is demanding, and you can't settle for anything less than the exact right speed that you need to be on, rate of descent, because it really makes a difference on these strips. So I'm gonna go full power with the brakes on, then I'll release, and I'm gonna have a little turn as I first start coming out, taking off, and then I'll be off before the dog leg and climb out in a curve to kind of climb up out of the bowl, get above the ridge line. Wind is pretty calm. It's been going up and down a little bit, so I gotta watch that. Wind is always a very serious consideration when you're operating at backcountry strips. All right, bringing my power in. The engine's sounding good. Oil pressure, temperature looking good. All right, nice. All right, engine instruments are all green, releasing the brakes. All right. Have a little turn here to make on the runway. I've got my tail up. And now I'm climbing out. Oh, the nose just a bit, get my airspeed up. Just following the runway out here. Wind is pretty calm. There, I'm climbing nicely. And pitching right around 62. I'm gonna come up over this short ridge. My goal is to be landed before the dog leg. I've made the mistake before of coming in actually being my flare in that dog leg. It makes things really difficult. Now you can see down in there, you can see how the runway curves just a bit. So this is the first backcountry strip that I attempted after I had done a mountain flying course in McCall, Idaho. I went through the McCall Mountain Canyon flying course with Lori McNichol's team. One of the key things that I took away from it is they taught canyon operating, canyon speed, and they recommend you use it anytime you're operating below the rim in a canyon. So what the canyon operating speed is a safe, slower speed that you're operating at, so that if you need to make a quick turn or something, you can easily do that. What I like to do is I like to set my downwind up at canyon operating speed, because in my Cessna 170, that's with 20 degrees of flaps and about 70 miles an hour, and trim it out. It's very nice. And then on my base, I go 30, sometimes 40 degrees of flaps, 40 definitely by final, and I'm slowing up to 55. So by already being at half flaps and 70 miles an hour, you know, it's just 2 notches of flap configuration change and 15 mile an hour difference, and for me that makes it a lot easier. That's what I'm gonna set up with. They typically said, you know, the first 10 or 20 degrees works for most aircraft. But I highly recommend a mountain flying course. Obviously I recommend theirs because I've been through it, but any kind of mountain flying course and backcountry course is really beneficial because it helps build your confidence, get lots of knowledge, and then you feel like you can start practicing at easier strips and working your way up in difficulties. I'm going to turn my base leg now. Go 30 degree flaps. Still see the runway. Now I've slowed up to 60. I'm going to do final approach at 55 miles an hour. At 5 miles an hour, it makes a difference. It could mean landing before or in the dog leg. Alright, so I'm coming along the ridge. Got a little bit of wind pushing me here. Go ahead and go 40. Okay, I'm coming in. Hugging this hillside. Here's 55. I've got these trees right here. Coming in right over. Alright, power's out. Have a little adjustment here to make. Alright, coming in. There we go. There we go, rolling it right on. I am down before the dog leg here. There we go. It makes it just a little nice turn here.
As I mentioned in the video, be sure to receive proper instruction before you go out and do some backcountry flying. And stay tuned next week. We're going to have some more in our Backcountry Beginner Basics series. Well, in April, we brought you this story that many veterans were facing a problem with the FAA. Nearly 5,000 were caught up in an FAA investigation, and it was as to whether or not they had reported receiving disability benefits from the VA on their medical application. Many of them were facing enforcement actions, and AOPA stepped in. We requested that the FAA grant amnesty and give veterans the opportunity to correct their medical certificate applications. Well, the FAA has responded to AOPA, and AOPA's Deputy General Counsel Jared Allen joins us to tell us the latest. Hey, Jared, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us, what did the FAA respond back to AOPA?
Alyssa, the FAA's June 15th response to AOPA outlined a reconciliation process that the FAA is offering to certain pilots, all of whom are also veterans. Now, generally speaking, this process requires a pilot who holds a first-class medical to submit a new, accurate medical application and schedule an exam with an AME, either before their current medical certificate expires or when it expires, or no later than July 31st of this year, whichever is earlier. And then for second and third class holders, they must do so when their current medical expires or by January 31st of 2024.
You had mentioned reconciliation earlier, but AOPA had asked for amnesty. Are any veterans receiving amnesty?
In this reconciliation process, the FAA is not granting complete amnesty to pilots who go through this process, but the FAA did state that it's hoping to limit its legal enforcement action to only the most egregious cases. Now, this concerns us because in the past, the FAA has offered very successful amnesty programs where pilots could rest assured that as long as they met certain conditions, the FAA would not pursue legal enforcement action against them. Here, there are no such formal guarantees, so we will very much wait and see if we hear about any of those cases. But for now, this is a very promising development.
For those who might still face enforcement action, what do those consequences look like? What action can the FAA take?
In any case involving a possibly incorrect or false statement on a medical application, the major concern is that the FAA will allege that that pilot made an intentionally false statement. In other words, the pilot knew they were answering the question incorrectly or falsely when they submitted that application to the FAA, and the FAA relied upon it in issuing a medical certificate. This is such a major concern because the FAA's sanction of choice in intentional falsification cases is to revoke not just the pilot's FAA medical certificate, but any and all FAA certificates that pilot holds.
Jared, I know you've personally been helping pilot veterans. If a veteran receives one of these letters, what should they do?
We're recommending that you contact a AOPA Pilot Protection Services attorney or any aviation attorney that's familiar with these issues. The reason is that, as I mentioned, this reconciliation process does not contain any formal guarantees that the FAA will not use any information you provide against you. So it's important that pilots understand the potential risks of this process as well as if they haven't received one of these reconciliation letters, but think that they may be subject to this type of investigation. It's important to note that currently, AOPA's understanding is that only pilots who receive a reconciliation letter from the FAA are eligible to participate in this process. So if you're a pilot who, again, thinks that they may have a concern but haven't received one of these reconciliation letters and perhaps would like to try to get one, you need to talk to an experienced aviation attorney to understand what your options are.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate all you're doing for our members and pilots who are veterans on this issue. It's hard to believe, but EAA Air Venture is only a few weeks away, and AOPA will be there as usual in our spot by the Brown Arch. Be sure to stop by and say hello, check in at the tent, and of course stop by to see the AOPA Sweepstakes Cessna 170 with all new avionics. And Air Venture is an ideal place to check out the latest new aircraft. Last year, Elixir Aircraft debuted their new airplane at Air Venture, and now Sierra Charlie Aviation, that's a flight school in Arizona, has ordered more than 100 of the new airplanes. So the Elixir is designed to be a Part 23 certified aircraft. It's all carbon fiber, has a glass cockpit, it's powered by a Rotax engine, it has 2 seats. Sierra Charlie Aviation is a large Part 61 flight school, and they've actually won honors for several years in the AOPA Flight Training Experience Awards Survey. You can check them out. They have a location in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they have expanded to Chandler as well. Now, if you live around Kentucky, there's a new general aviation airport that you might want to check out. It's called Gallatin County Airport. The identifier here is 8 Golf Kilo. It just opened in Sparta, Kentucky. Now, the airport has a 5,000-foot paved runway, and it's going to serve the I-71 corridor area between Louisville and Cincinnati. With the 4th of July coming up, we wanted to bring you the amazing story of Ike's bird. Now, that's a twin Aero Commander. It was the smallest Air Force One ever. It served in the Eisenhower administration. And Gerald Oliver, a volunteer with the Commemorative Air Force in Dallas, Texas, takes us behind the scenes to tell us this story.
There's a story about how we came to know Air Force One. Over the skies of Richmond, Virginia one day in about 1956, Air Force 8610, which is the tail number on the Lockheed Constellation that Ike was in, called Columbine 2, was flying in the same airspace as Eastern Airlines 8610. And the controller made a call and said, 8610, turn left to such and such a degree. And of course, both airplanes responded. The Air Force didn't like that, so they came up with the name Air Force One. Anytime a sitting president is on an aircraft of the Air Force, it's called Air Force One. And you know, these airplanes are really nothing more than metal and rubber and aluminum. They all have those similarities. But all of us have within us the need and the desire to know that while our days here on earth, we existed and we mattered. Something happened in our lives that made it worthwhile living. These aircraft represent those people who over a stretch of time in our history made something really incredible happen. So we're happy to talk about the Aero Commander really for 2 reasons. First, it was used by the Eisenhower administration from 1955 to 1960. For the Commemorative Air Force, Dwight Eisenhower is very, very important because he was a Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, led the D-Day invasion, and helped win the war in Europe and defeat Nazism. That was very, very important. So his life mattered, and we honor him. But we also honor the aircraft because it's the smallest plane ever to be used as Air Force One. Air Force One kind of has a magic about it, doesn't it? You know, you see the big 747 flying all around. It's got these beautiful colors. but it stands for something very, very important in the hearts and minds of all Americans, and that is that it stands for the presidency, it stands for our Constitution, it stands for our way of life and our freedoms. So we really want to preserve this aircraft, both to honor President Eisenhower and all the veterans of World War II, but also to honor America and say thank you for what you did, because your life mattered. And so these aircraft are representations of what they've done. I acquired a farm in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania that's actually part of the Gettysburg battlefield. And when he became president, he went to his Air Force One pilot and said, I want to fly back and forth from Washington, D.C. to my farm in Gettysburg. That's kind of my retreat. Well, the Constellation was much too big to do that. Helicopters were deemed not safe enough at the time. So they did a fly-off. They got the Aero Commander, the Cessna 310, the Piper Apache, and the Twin Bonanza, and said, we'll compare these aircraft, and they chose the Aero Commander. So this aircraft right here is the smallest airplane ever to be used as Air Force One. There were 6 of them acquired by the Air Force in 1955. This is number 5 of those 6. It's the only L-26 Commander that is still in existence flying today. There are a couple of others, one in the Air Force Museum, one in a museum in Louisiana. But this aircraft we keep in flyable condition for the reasons I talked about before. We want to honor the President and all of our veterans of World War II, but also let it stand for our American freedoms, the things that we think are important. So today when it flies, when kids get in, when veterans get inside of it, when people come up and ask the story and we're able to tell the story, we get a tremendous amount of personal satisfaction out of that. Now to all of you AOPA members out there, we want to ask you a question. Come join us and be a part of the CAF. Help us preserve history. You know, one of the things that we think is important is the ability to actually get your hands on history and feel the passion and esprit de corps as well. Come be a part of our organization, keep your membership in AOPA and join the CAF, and come let us have these great organizations together and keep aviation and history alive. Thanks for coming and visiting us.
What an amazing story. Special thanks to AOPA video producer Brianna Cabasa, longtime AOPA pilot contributor Barry Schiff, and aviation photographer Mike Pfizer for just really bringing that story to life for us. And a special thanks also to the Commemorative Air Force. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Fly with AOPA, and I want to wish all of you a happy 4th of July. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all our latest videos. This week, we leave you with some video from a flight in the B-25 Mitchell bomber Panchito, and that comes into us from AOPA Publications Assistant Editor Emma Kwidzeweit. Be sure to send in your favorite flying videos at the link in the description. You just might see them on an upcoming show. And as always, if you're not already an AOPA pilot, we'd love for you to join us. Just click the link at the end of the video to learn more about our trial membership.